Happy Sunday afternoon, book connectors. Welcome back to the Book Connection. I am your host, Blue-Eyed Black Devil. And this time I am here with I guess I would call them like video Hodge Podge, where I've gathered up a few books that I've read within the last 2 years and just have not done a full video on them. But I still feel like they are worthy to be commented on. So that's what I want to do here today. And let's see, the first one up is Bent But Not Broken by one of my favorite authors, Mary Monroe. Now, this book came out a little over a year ago, I believe. And I bought it, read it. It was good. It had some her signature phrases and the types of foods that she likes to eat. They were listed as usual all throughout the book. But it essentially is about this young woman named Naomi Sims who felt like her parents were really strict and she just wanted to get out from under their roof. So she marries an older man. His name was Jacob Parcell. Together they have one child, a daughter named Ethel May. But Naomi soon learns that her husband was as strict or more than her parents were. So she was just never really happy. And he was controlling, and then he was a womanizer. It just, I don't know. And then their daughter, Ethel May, let me see. Can't come up with a better word. In a word, if you have to describe Ethel May, it would be to say that she was promiscuous. That's an understatement. She was very promiscuous. But along the way, Naomi eventually meets a man. This man named Homer comes to town. He and Naomi strike up a relationship. Now, he was single, but she wasn't. But she told Homer that her home life was bad and how her husband treats her and how the daughter does whatever she wants sexually and this, that, and the other. And if you read any of her books, you know that most of them are set in small town Alabama or Ohio. This one, I believe, was in Alabama again. But they decide, Homer and Naomi, that they would run away together. Unfortunately, before they could, her husband Jacob had a stroke. Once that happened, she could not bring herself to leave her husband in his time of need. So Homer goes on off and makes a life for himself, and eventually so did Ethel. I think Ethel stayed local, but eventually she did leave. Then, I don't remember, but it was years later, Homer shows up in town again, and guess who was his wife? That's as much as I want to say about that book. I think you all would enjoy reading it. It was just a twist and a turn. Well, I've seen it done before in one of her other series. But yeah, that book was good. It was good. It worth reading. That's all I can say about that. What? No, it's not. I forgot to tell you the funniest thing I found in this particular book. Now, if you are not familiar with her works, and even if you are, you know most of her books are set in the 30s all the way up through the 60s. I think this particular book was set in like the 40s. And so she had gone to work. She worked for a white family. She was the housekeeper, cook, whatever they needed. Well, they loved her. They loved her. They loved her. But somehow, her boss ends up at their house one day. Now, her husband, Jacob, had just beaten her for something. And so she had a black eye. And the man was like, oh, my goodness, what happened to your eye? What happened? So she didn't say anything, right? The husband said, she's just clumsy. She's clumsy. He said, one time she fell face first down on the pavement and got up with a knot on the back of her head. Oh, I'm wrong for that. I'm sorry, but that was the funniest thing in that story. Because now, how do you explain to somebody else that not only did your husband jump on you, but then he turns around and makes it your fault to, your boss's face? Goodness, that was rough. All right, moving on. Okay, so next up is Not My Daughter by Barbara Delinsky. Now, I'd never read anything of hers, nor had I ever heard of her before, but I am so glad I did. I like this book so much that I went back to check other books of hers out, and I have added 2, possibly 3, to my wish list, and I'm pretty sure I will read at least one more of her books by year's end. So let's go. Not My Daughter is about, one of the main characters, Susan, is a high school principal. Her daughter, Lily, is 17, and Lily, with 3 of her best girlfriends, decided that they would make a pact to get pregnant their last year of high school. So, and I forgot to mention that all 4 of the girls, Lily, Mary Kate, Abby, and Jessica, their mothers are also best friends. So you have a mom's friend group and daughter friend group. Now, Abby is also, so it's 5 of them. Abby. And so, one night on Susan's birthday, she and her daughter, Lily, went out to eat, and she had noticed from time to time that something is not quite right with Lily. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but boy, when she found out what it was, that never would have entered her mind. But Lily does that particular night at dinner, tells her mother what's happened and that they were pregnant. And so Susan ends up having to battle to hold on to her job because they look at it as, there obviously are no morals in Susan's house, which I think is about the dumbest thing we could say as a nation. But she ended up keeping her job. But here's what I like most. It dealt with things. Well, it was going to be some things. What bothered Susan the most was that she herself had gotten pregnant with Lily at age 17. Lily's dad offered to marry her, but she didn't want to be tied down twice with the baby and the husband, knowing neither one of them were ready for, the baby. So they went their separate ways, but they stayed in touch. So I like that. But what I think I like more importantly for me is that, we all hope and wish that when people who are still in childbearing years and they still want babies and stuff, you hope and pray that the baby is born first and foremost healthy. And that was the same in this book. But the baby had a condition, and they found out about it before the baby was born. And yes, the baby did have to have a couple of surgeries to repair it, and supposedly he'll be able to live never really knowing this happened unless his mom tells him. So that was good that they dealt with, high risk pregnancies. That was good. And I'm just going to wrap it up to say what I thought was kind of semi-cute, funny, or whatever, lighthearted anyway. Lily's paternal grandfather, meaning her mother's father. No, her dad's father. Forgive me, y'all. Okay, yeah. Lily's granddad, her dad's dad, at one time dated Lily's maternal grandmother. So Susan's mom and Rick, which was Lily's dad's name, they call his father Big Rick. So Big Rick once dated Susan's mother, Eleanor. All of this while Ellen's husband was passing. By the time her husband died, that particular relationship had broken up. So Ellen and Big Rick were no longer together by the time Ellen's husband died, but they did remain friends. And so you all should just go ahead and read that. I thought it was a pretty good book. It dealt with serious issues, and it was just a good book. I'll let you all see what the final wrap is on that one. Miss Pearlie's Girls by another one of my favorite authors, Rashonda Tate Billingsley. Okay, it's been a minute since I read it, but I have it here for something. Okay, this is what I can remember. This is a tale of 4 sisters who are estranged from one another. They are called back together because their mother is dying. And her one wish was that her children could put all of the drama behind them and continue to live out their lives in harmony. Now, I believe all parents want that for their children, but does it pay off? Here's what I can tell you. They were all successful in whatever it is they did. I can remember that the oldest daughter's name is Maxine. She's married to a preacher. The youngest daughter's name is Leslie. She is an illustrator. Then the 2 girls in the middle, I can't remember their names, but I think one of them is into photography, and I don't remember what the other one is. Please forgive me, it's been a minute, okay? But anyway, they all were successful in their own rights. Now, what stood out to me, I think this is the first time I've read a book where one of the main characters, one of the main characters is gay and ends up marrying her partner. Now, I've read other books where gay people, they meet, they marry, they have families and things. But I think it's the first time, I know it's the first book of hers I've read where a gay person could have possibly have been the main character. So I like that. And every other thing that goes along with, I guess that goes along with same-sex marriage, meaning no one in the family knew that Leslie was that way. Okay, so what was the issue? Maxine and Leslie, there was always tension there. And so we get to the end of the book and we find out what the source of the tension was and how it was handled. I didn't see that coming from anywhere. I couldn't have guessed that at all. So please do yourselves a favor when you get a minute. And if you like me, where I just seem to be all over the place in terms of what I read, pull this out if you're not reading it or haven't read it, and you're just looking for something different, please get this book and read it. And then when you read it, you can come back later and tell me what you think. But yes, by all means, please read Miss Pearlie's Girls by Rashonda Tate Billingsley. One of Us is Dead by Geneva Rose. Book connectors, you better hang on to those hats and hang on tight. Here we go. There's 6 characters in this book, all women. Let's see if I can name them all. We have Keisha, Crystal, and Karen. Then we have Shannon, Olivia, and Jenny. Now, Jenny owns a beauty salon. Keisha is her best friend, and she works there with Jenny at the beauty salon. Then Shannon is a realtor, and she's married to a politician. Then we have, who would I say? Jenny, Keisha, Shannon. Karen, I don't think she works, but she's married to a plastic surgeon. Olivia doesn't work, but her husband works with the politician. I think that's everybody. Oh, Crystal. Okay, Crystal and Olivia, they are just like 2 socialites. And the story takes place in Buckhead, Georgia. Buckhead is a very affluent neighborhood in Atlanta, or little city, town in Atlanta, Georgia. So, anyone who's everyone, if you're in Buckhead, you know you have money, and that's truth or fiction. So, the reason I told you to hang on to your hats, because along with the everyday run-of-the-mill infidelity, you have S&M going on, and I promise you, I did not see that coming at all. I'm like, what, huh? Okay, so that's there, but then you have human trafficking, and then you have misappropriated funding, you have murder, you just have a little bit of it. Just when you think you got it made, you find out you were wrong about something. But it really was, it was a good book. There was really never a dull moment in this particular book. I think in part because it had so many different characters as well as stories, and then, ultimately death. But I have never heard of anything of hers before, nor had I ever heard of Geneva Rose herself. So, just like Barbara Delinsky, when I finished reading this book, I went back and I added a couple of her books to my wish list. And my goal is to read at least one other book by Geneva Rose before this year is up. So yes, everyone, please. That's as much as I feel like I can say without telling you the whole book. I may end up one day going back and giving this book its own video. But I just finished it last night, and since I wanted this up for today, I went ahead and mentioned it for today. So don't forget, One of Us is Dead by Geneva Rose. Inside the O'Briens by Lisa Genova. Now, this is a tale of a man named Joe. Joe has Huntington's disease. And there is no cure for Huntington's disease. That's all I knew about it before I read the book. Now, Joe's a family man. He's married, and he and his wife have, I think it's 4 children, all total. And Joe wasn't aware that he had this disease until, I don't know, in his mid-40s, I think. One of the reasons he didn't know is because, he remembered, after he found out what it was, he realized that several family members had died, but they all attributed them to like the deaths to just any ordinary thing, stroke, maybe heart attack, And I know with his mother, she had it, and she was put in the facility when Joe was like 9 years old. And I think when he was 12, his father died. And so he had one other sister. So it was just the two of them. And Joe, after his mother died, because people thought that the lady was an alcoholic. I don't know if the dad believed that or not, but just the neighborhood and other folks in the family thought she was a bit odd, a bit quirky, and that she had a problem with alcohol. And one of the reasons they thought that because her speech had started slurred. She had trouble walking, then she had trouble moving, and it just got from bad to worse. That's when his father put her in the facility, and he was kind of ashamed of that as a kid. He didn't understand. No, like Huntington's disease never came up. Joe, just after he was diagnosed, he began to suspect that other family members had passed away because they all did the same types of things that Joe started doing. All right, I said at the beginning this is a hereditary disease and there's no cure for it. So when Joe started exhibiting things that he used to not do before, such as one time they were at the dinner table and he was pouring water in everyone's glasses, and somehow he ended up dropping the picture. It shatters, glasses everywhere, water's everywhere. But nobody said anything. I guess it was one of those things you just make a note and keep it to yourself, whatever. But then he came home one day. He was at home for a while, and then all of a sudden he just got angry. And nobody understood what made him so mad. Everything was just what it was. And then once he got diagnosed, he understood, or the family understood, that those were characteristics of Huntington's disease. It's like, something's not right. You can't put your finger on it, therefore you can't help yourself, but you don't want to say anything out loud and hoping nobody says anything to you. Okay, so eventually they got the diagnosis. So he and his wife decided to call the children in to tell them about it. And, they told them that they were all, they may end up having it because of the heredity of it all. And for a while, one of his sons had just recently been married, and they were working on a baby. The day they were going to tell the family about her being pregnant is the day they found out about the Huntington's disease. Now, when the announcement was made, yes, everybody was shocked, but the daughter-in-law, sister-in-law, she just started crying, and she just got up and left the table. And to me, I would have known then she must have it, or maybe her husband had confided in her, but he couldn't because he didn't know. So after everybody finds out that the dad has Huntington's disease, eventually 2 of the children tested, and both of them had it. Unfortunately, one of them was his son, Dan, who was the one expecting his first child. But scientific medicines and technology has come a long way. Now there is something, according to this book anyway, and I forgot to say this at the top, that this is a book of fiction. I just hope that whatever it is, because in this book, something had come along where they obviously they still don't have a cure for Huntington's disease, but it is something that you can do to prolong some of the when you may be afflicted with it. So the baby was born healthy, but there was two things that they had to do, because when they found out that Huntington's disease was in the baby's family, then that made the wife a high-risk pregnancy. And some of the things they did to treat her was supposed to be for the betterment of the baby. They don't say that the baby won't ever come down with it, but if the baby does, hopefully they would be like Joe. Joe was in his mid-40s when he came down with it. Now, the only other thing I will say is how is this book, it was realistic for me all the way through, even down to the point of when he had to stop working. He was told that he would only be able to receive like 30% of his pension. And this man had worked 35, well, it couldn't have been that long because he was 45 when he found out. But he had worked like 20 plus years. He was either a fireman or a policeman. I can't remember. I just know that they both worked together. It's been a minute since I read the book. But whatever it was, all he was eligible to receive was 30%, unless he divorced his wife. And they had been married like 20-some-odd years, and neither one of them wanted it. He felt like he had no other choice, because even though he would have gotten 30% of his pension, they were going to take over the house. And he was like, no. And she didn't want a divorce just because he was sick. He didn't want her to have to depend on their children for her living. So essentially, they did get a divorce just so that he could get like 50% of his pension. And to me, that's still dirty, because however long he worked, I don't care if it was 10 years, he gave 100%. And you all never had a problem with it, the bosses of Joe. You didn't have a problem with his performance. If he did, he wouldn't have been there. So when he needed it, it came at a cost. It's like you can't afford to be sick, and you can't afford not to work. So that's that book. Now, this wraps up my video Hodge Podge for this go around. I think that I'm trying to get back in the algorithm, so you may see a video here and there. It might be 5 minutes, it might be half an hour, it might be an hour, whatever it is I feel like I need to do to get back into the algorithm of YouTube. I did receive a note from them the other day saying that they are aware of how long it's taking with videos. The video processing, for whatever reason, has slowed down drastically, and they are supposedly working on that. So I guess they've gotten enough complaints from content creators, and I must admit that is part of why I stopped doing them regularly. But I'm trying to get back in here now that I know that YouTube knows that it's something they need to do on their end to help push us through a little bit faster. So with all of that being said, just subscribers, thank you so much for being subscribed. Visitors, please feel free to join us. And everyone, please make sure you have your notification bells. Not only do they need to be on, but they need to be set to all, so you will know every time I upload a video. And in the meantime, book connectors, remember this: as long as there are books around, there's always something to read. book connectors. Until we read again, please be safe out there. Have a wonderful work week. And until we read again, God bless.